Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio. You are about to join a frequency that will open your mind, expand your heart, and activate your spirit. Thank you for joining Kelly Meehan, Spirit Baby Medium and Master Energy Therapist. Kelly believes in the power of the Spirit Baby. She speaks with babies in spirit before life, in the womb, and after life. She supports, teaches, and guides others to tune into the intuitive and mystical parts of life for greater wisdom. Join her in meeting your soul baby and build your connection and relationship with deep love and trust. Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio with your host, Spirit Baby Medium, Kelly.
Welcome to episode 61, May 3rd, 2019, Pre-Birth Communication for an Intuitive Pregnancy to Ease Anxieties and Fears. Congratulations, you're pregnant! How can pre-birth communication offer guidance in pregnancy? What does baby have to share with you about labor and birth? What spiritual remedies can support the ease of anxieties and fears? Always my favorite topic to connect with because it makes me reflect that many, I want to say eons ago, but I don't know what an eon is. So many moons ago, way back, many years, probably like 10 years, maybe more, I had my first, it was definitely more than 10 years ago. Maybe it's been 14 years now. Had my first real pre-birth communication experience with someone else's babies. And that was the launching point to exploring over the years what this connection was with this energy of these beings that are wanting to be born and coming into this world, and some staying for moments, some staying for longer times, and that huge level of mystery in this. And I, was continued to be open as I connected mamas, papas, and their babies together in ways that were encouraging, that were empowering. And I've gotten so steep in the conscious conception community, a lot of women with fertility issues or just wanting no issues, just wanting to create a conscientious conception into pregnancy, into motherhood. And I've had women just recently, like, do you work with pregnancy? And I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? Of course I work with pregnancy. I feel like my energy has been so shifted, and I'm going to be creating more episodes that are going to be talking more about pregnancy, being in that pregnant energy, working with that developmental bonding, the physiology, emotional, and spiritual connections of baby being, growing and connecting in different ways. And I do have past episodes that talk about dreams and with other guests and, ways of bonding. And, there's so many different things when it comes to pregnancy. There's, of course, you can Google, a lot of stuff. And there's just so many different pregnant bodies, there's different pregnant experiences, and every pregnancy is different. And sometimes there's pregnancy loss when there's pregnancy, and there's a lot of a lot of mystery. A lot of things can be somewhat predicted, and sometimes they really can't. And I'm always reminded when I get these really intuitive, highly intuitive, I would say, women that are in pregnancy, maybe they're in the first, second, or third trimester, and they're just feeling so bonded and so open with baby energy. And then we get to kind of come in together and have a conversation. And sometimes, it's different with baby. It's different with baby for me because it's not my baby. But the soul has things to share and say. And I really, I love to feel the grace, the beauty, the love, the light body. And there's such a profoundness, and it's so hard to explain how to feel. I feel like people that are energetically sensitive, that are clairvoyant, clairsentient, any other clairs, understands that the impact it makes on our own consciousness as I continue to hold space to be some type of, I'm going to say gatekeeper. It sounds so official. It sounds so like I'm in the kingdom of the gatekeeper. I'm helping babies come through, but I don't know how to receive that I'm helping babies come through. I feel like we have a relationship. I have a relationship with Spirit Baby World, let's say, the life before life. And there's a lot of people, a lot of women, a lot of men in the globe that have this connection. You don't have to be, having a podcast like me, but I feel like it helps. You could be in a village somewhere, being a grandmother and being the wise sage of the community and being that pre-birth communicator person to come to. You could be, in a high multiplex wild city and just being that support in that community as well. And, there are many different energetic awarenesses and responses to this, again, this life before life, this baby world. And I know I always check in with my own heart space, like where am I navigating in my life journey, and where is my understanding to be of service. And I know that's a part of my plan, because for me, I feel like it's actually really easy to be of service. I know that may sound really kind of strange, but I feel like a lot of people who know that feeling of being the caretaker, and it's probably because I have been a caretaker in this lifetime. And so I've been exploring what that feels like in my own biological family and how it moves out into the world in different ways. And so this life before life, this baby world, this connection, so this pregnant energy, this pregnancy, is so different, right? Conception and pregnancy, there's almost a separation, but they're really not that separate. And I've said this before, I feel like when I'm tuning into baby energy and conception and pregnancy, they're very similar. And sometimes women have a very beautiful auric field of pregnancy. It's like all warm, and I feel like it's warm around their body. And it's like, very fertile, like, energy's moving, something's happening. And then I get these images at times where I see a little baby being, like, standing behind the pelvic floor of the mom, like almost like in where the lower spine is, like, hey, we're going in, jumping in. Maybe there's one, maybe there's two. We're all lining up where this is happening. And that's my expression of energy, because I know it's different for everybody and how they connect and how they feel and sense into it. And, when I have these different women, it comes to my mind is this pre-birth connection, because pre-birth means, it's here, baby's here, like there's something happening. And what is that connection that parents are building? And it can really ease and guide a pregnancy. And I've had people ask this, I've been interviewed on this, and I know I speak for myself, and I know there's millions of women who also feel like their bonding time during their pregnancy with pre-birth communication, with spirit baby communication, gave them that next piece of connection and awareness. I feel like, you go to a birth education class, and it's very helpful, and you learn different things. And at the same time, you're not a cookie cutter of other people's stories, that how you experience your birth, your connection to your body is going to be very different. And of course, there's well-meaning doctors and midwives and, other outside supportive coaches and doulas they all have their own soul connection. They all have their own energy and their own philosophy and their own intuitive connection. And so, this is where it's honoring for those that are in pregnancy. I feel like we need to be more honoring and worshiping of women in pregnancy, that this is a human being. This is life. Like, if you can really just step away for a moment and really look at that larger picture, that every single person comes through a womb into this lifetime, and it's so that's incredible. This tiny little uterus, right? You've seen the anatomy maps and pictures. You could Google it. It's so tiny looking, and then it just goes, whoo, gets so big. And it's funny because I remember during my second pregnancy 2.5 years ago, giving birth to my son, my second son, and I remember my first son was at the midwife's appointment, and the midwife pulls out a chart, this big expanded uterus, and it just shows you the different levels of time. Baby's like, a speck, and then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, baby is big, and the uterus just knows how to expand to it because it's made to expand to it. And I remember my older son said so innocently, right? I'll never forget this. I believe he was probably just about 5. And he looked at the picture, looked at me and said, the baby's going to fit through that tiny, tiny hole. I was like, oh my goodness, what is he talking about? And he looked at the picture, and it literally was the tiniest hole around the cervix. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, yes, he's right. And but we know the body's wisdom to expand and allow baby to move out. Yeah, sometimes baby has to navigate things, and we'll talk about that too. There's different, positions that baby moves into, and how, creating that connection can help talk to baby, like, let's get things going. It's not just about your body. It's so easy we get so lost in the pregnant body of the self. And that's important. We have to honor our body, but what about this being now, this little body that's growing, whether it be a male or a female, and their own little skeletal system and their muscles and skin, and they're growing in this amniotic fluid. Their placenta is their nourishing of their home and their sustenance, and they're working with it. They know the intelligence. It's very innate. It's biological. It's it's science, and at the same time there's so much spirit energy in it, because the soul isn't hanging out in the womb all the time. The soul is walking around and moving in and out of different parts of ourselves. And so, being open to the curiosity of how that connection with baby is. And when you create, I feel like, a pre-birth communication practice along with pregnancy, it just builds your confidence up. It builds your intuition. It gives you a secure sense to anchor into. And I feel like it can really save things, especially if you feel like there's certain urgencies or testing, checking in not just with yourself, but with baby, and saying, but what are we doing here? And this is why it's really nice if you can. I always feel like I encourage people, to connect in conception, even if it's years before you conceive. It does add a different element and awareness to the connection of birth. And, it's different for everybody. I feel like, depending on your own psychic connection, your awareness, that inner psychic space where you can feel, you can sense, maybe you can visually see, maybe you connect with dreams, and paying attention to that along the journey. And of course, we're not going to leave it out, but there is going to be fear and anxieties at times, sometimes negative thoughts, and really what to do with them is important. I know that there is a level, of course, of things that are more mild to highly severe and clinical, and we'll talk about that too. Because it's not just about going, okay, I'm just going to imagine my fears away, my anxieties away, or I'm going to, do nothing, which doesn't really help at all. Always doing something. I feel like in pregnancy is these 9 sacred months, more like 10 months for many, to just be with this pregnant, expanding self, to be with your body. And I feel like that first trimester, man, that is such hardship right there. And then sometimes after that, there can be more ease and connection. And sometimes it's just really difficult all the way through. And you got to find your rhythm. That's how it always is. It's like, where is your rhythm? For my rhythm was vanilla ice cream shakes every week, almost every other day. And you think, oh, how can you use all that sugar? And I was having my milk and my dairy, let's just say. I was getting my calcium. It actually was very satiating to my chronic nausea. And I had a summer baby, so it was like, oh, yeah, ice cream, this is good. But the most interesting thing was, as soon as I gave birth and everything just shifted, I just could not look at vanilla ice cream for a very long time. It was like, nope, I'm done. I don't want that around me. But pregnancy, I needed it. It felt good. It was nourishing, and I'm proud of that, and I stand by that. So bringing that pre-birth connection in pregnancy, again, offers guidance, offers that next piece of bonding, and allows you to check in. So when you're looking even at your, really tuning in, really sitting in a meditative practice is really comforting. Even sitting with other women that are in pregnancy is so healing. Building that community connection, that you're all connecting with each other, with bonding with your baby energy. And so when you're looking at that, so let's say we get a group of women and everyone is pregnant with boys, girls, twins, whatever, and maybe different, trimesters, maybe maybe everyone's in the same trimester. And so the energy, everybody is resonating in the same energy, meaning that everyone is coming with the intended energy to connect with baby. And what a beautiful thing. And that would be really amazing. More pre-birth communication circles, right? Let's just scatter them around the globe and have women just connecting in that way. And being able to just process through their voice, through conversation, and also checking in with the spiritual part and really learning how to trust and build energy around that. Because as I always tell women, you are in your own pregnant body. Nobody's in there with you besides your baby. But nobody really knows how you feel and what you think and what is actually happening. And there's something so powerful about trust. And I've spoken other episodes about, we understand how the maternity system is, and there's a lot of fight, and there's a lot of pushing against, and there's also a lot of subconscious trauma with the feminine. And so there's so many different elements that many women in hospitals, they do have to fight, and it feels like a very masculine kind of thought process and organization. And I know that with so many movements and social media that we're really moving to shift that, especially, in the Western mind in the world, the loud mouth of the Western woman, I would say, really trying to work more with being in that space of self-confidence, of self-love, of self-honoring, of self-respect. And as we are moving that together collectively, because it can't just be just all the women doing it, it has to be the masculine and the feminine together working to change the way the system is. And I see such amazing, oh my gosh, so many amazing women in the birth community through different races and cultures really stepping up in such a powerful way. And we're meant to step up in that way and be advocates for each other. And so you have to look at that piece when you're birthing in a hospital especially, or even birthing at home, knowing, where your environment is that feels the most de-stressing, that feels the most loving, that feels the most pure, that feels the most intuitive. And it's different for everybody. There's no right or wrong way and where to birth. You have to feel that you're resonating in the right space and checking in with baby. Does this feel right? And let's say you're asking baby, but you're not getting a lot of answers. That is a really important message right there. And there's many reasons why that can happen, because some women have come to me, well, am I going to birth at home? Am I going to birth in a hospital? And it's like, okay, well, check in with baby. What does that feel like to you? And if baby goes quiet and you're very intuitive, I feel like there's something in it for the individual. There's something in it where the individual needs to make that choice, and it's really not about baby. And this could be very confusing for a lot of people, and I've seen it with babies all the time in spirit body, where they really don't care as much as the mother, the parent to be, as much as they've invested in a test, in a sonogram, in a taking this medicine, doing this exam, that, and just checking in with the self and seeing, is this about me or is this about baby? And so don't project, this is where it gets hard. I feel like there's so much projection around baby, like baby has to, do this, or, I want them to be like this, or we already start projecting a little bit on our kids before they're even in their physical bodies running in the world. And again, it's not about perfection, as pregnant parent to be, and even parents, there's going to be a lot of trial and error, let's say. And so you just navigate through. But there's something I feel so powerful, and I want to say that's so powerful, when you do feel empowered in birth, when you do feel you're intuitively connected. And I know birth plans always change. And when you create a birth plan, it has to change. If you don't offer flexibility in a birth plan, then you will have a disempowering experience moving into labor and birth. And there are a lot of women that do that. Of course, there's a lot of women, not that they do that to themselves, but it happens. And there's more pieces to it, to the individual journey and what that's about. And this is why in your intuitive, spirit baby connected pregnancy, you build that connection. Now you build your community, whether it's doulas, acupuncture, coaches, yoga supporters, prenatal massage, midwives, friends, family, people that can really uphold that kind of conscious energy and really respecting you, but really feeling it in their own bodies that they respect you. And you'll know and you'll sense that when people have fear for your choices, that's their fear, that's not your fear. And that's really important to distinguish, because you do, this world can be very intense. There's a lot of empathic, intuitive women that really are so sharp and so connected to baby energy. And you're wanting to create that really stressless environment as much as possible and not taking in the fear and anxieties of others. And that's a big part of it too. And maybe even a lot of women will have anxieties and fear, especially if they've had birth loss, right? Miscarriage, maybe multiple birth losses, or even stillbirth that some women experience as well. These different parts are important to look at, but not have to dive deep into it. I feel like it's just, there are so many different possibilities, and this is where your intuition just kind of pays attention to your pregnant self. And it's okay to move into anxiety and fear. I feel like it's so normal to have anxious and fearful experiences along the way. And some women in pregnancy will have nightmares. They'll have, they'll fear that their baby will be disabled, or there's fears around, what if I get hurt and fall and this baby gets hurt, or what's going on. I feel like there's this very thin membrane of muscle, and so there's like, what's happening in that physical place and how is baby growing? And we're not always supposed to have all the answers, and this is where it gets tricky. You can be intuitive, and a lot of women I've met, they've sensed different things, and they didn't really know what they were sensing, and then they got different results back that made sense to what they were sensing. Either it was something that was more negative or it was something more positive even. And so, again, this is where I feel like more than anything, intuition is going to guide the way in pregnancy, but also in the pre-birth communication practice that you're creating over your lovely time as you're bonding with baby in that beautiful way. And it does help when it comes to labor and birth. I feel like I've seen it in my own experience with both my children, how, okay, where's my baby? What's happening? And there's, again, if there's a lot of fear in the environment outside of the body, the energies push into that. And the body coils and tightens up and stress. And it's like, oh, where's baby? I can't find baby's heartbeat. Or we have to get the baby out. There's all this urgency all of a sudden. And a lot of urgency is actually unnecessary. And I know that a lot of, as a birth advocate and a researcher and being in these communities, I've seen a lot of just super stressful environments in hospitals. And of course it's not going to feel, you're not going to be relaxed. Of course you're going to be anxious and fearful if your environment is telling you that things are dangerous and it's not okay. You go in, our bodies and our somatic beings go into these hyper alert states. Our sympathetic, parasympathetic systems start kicking up, and, our cortisols change, our brain, how we react changes. And we even know, even in labor, that there's certain part of the brain that gets activated. And, this is why women need quiet, undisturbed, unmeddling. Stop meddling. Don't meddle. No more meddling in women's vaginas to give birth. And, just letting the process kind of move and just be really super quiet and observant of it, and really tuning into the self. I feel like I wish more doctors and, I'd say my midwife was really amazing, but, I'm sure there are midwives that aren't amazing. Tuning into the self to see, using that education and that schooling and experience, but also tuning into the self. Like, is this a day to be present with the birth of a child? I do feel like that sometimes it's not, I feel like my first midwife probably shouldn't have been at my birth, to be honest. She wasn't in a right space. There was a lot of anxiety in her life. So then, therefore, it shifted the whole experience for me in a way that was actually quite traumatizing. And so, but we have to look at that. Like, okay, where's the mind and the space of the individual? Where is their understanding? I know with my second birth, I swear, I felt like my midwives were like meditating in the corner in the darkness of my living room. I'm not really sure, but it felt very peaceful. It felt very safe for me to now enter into this next phase of pushing and believe me, I wish it was a reflex, but I have to be pushing. But I can feel, it was so magical, really, that second time where I felt how the contractions, they do work with you. They do push. It's so fascinating when you can really just be safe and open. You can feel, and that quietness, that rhythm of how your body and your baby are moving together. And I always feel like it's such joy when baby comes out into the world. And, I'm talking about my own experience, and I'm talking about vaginal birth, because there are other births, and I've talked about that in past episodes, that, things happen and things shift in certain directions. And there is, there's so much to say around that, because there's not one reason or why things happen. Things are very evolving for the individual, and there's so many different elements to why that happens. And, so the anxiety and fear. So women will have, anxiety and fear, not just, in pregnancy, but also even towards labor, towards birth. And then you have this being. And so how do you, curb these anxieties? I do feel like this is why I love homeopathy, flower essence. There's meditation, there's yoga, massage, acupuncture. I always feel like there's also nature therapy. There's even psychotherapy, which is really nice. And sometimes in pregnancy, the anxieties are all bundled up, and they have to be gently laid out and de-stressed, really. And, anxiety's there for a reason. This is really important. I feel like if you're in pregnancy and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with this anxiety? It's there for a reason, and you have to just kind of be a spiritual detective with yourself to see what that's about. I know that I had a lot of anxiety in the second, because I was fearful of the birth. Because of the, my body had a memory. It was vibrating, but my brain was like, wait, what's happening? And I found for me, homeopathy was really amazing. and talking about it. I feel like my midwives and my doula were my spiritual therapists the whole time. Like, what are we doing? We're talking, we're talking about nutrition and weight, and they did all that, biological stuff. But I felt like it was more me processing each time, to allow myself to unwind, again, this big curled up ball of yarn of feeling and of issues. And it became, it became softer as time went on. And I was like, okay, I felt like my energy was really shifting, and I was walking what I call, how I looked at it for myself was, I'm standing in the flame. I'm not watching it from far and I'm going to go into it and get burned. It's like I'm moving through this fire and this energy of light. And I'm okay. I don't know what's going to happen. I still don't know what's going to happen. And I wanted to let go to layers of that. Okay, and I'm just going to show up for my birth. And I'm going to see where it takes me. And I have, there is definitely a psychological piece to that, working that ease in and being open to explore that. I also felt, I felt the tension and the anxiety around it, and then it would soften, and then over time it softened more and more. And because I was giving attention to it, I was allowing it to release. And sometimes anxieties come from our own life, when you were a child, when you were an adult. If you're more anxiety prone, that that could be very apparent. It could be elevated, and people would say more hormones are changing, right? So things get escalated and elevated. But I like to believe that those issues were there, and that maybe in your pregnancy you're being actually offered an opportunity to shift them out, to change that story, so you don't have to live in anxiety. And so, of course, now, speaking about clinical anxiety, let's say you're on medication and the anxiety's that bad, you still can navigate through that and find your balance. And I feel like sometimes when I've connected with people in pregnant anxiety or just anxiety without pregnancy, sometimes we do need more pharmacological support around that. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes there is herbal support, there is homeopathy, there are other methods and techniques, but sometimes it's harder to know which one to do. And this is where you guide into it. And then the fear. I do feel like there's different levels of fear, and I've been speaking so much more about this lately in my programs. There is I call it mild, normal fear, right? We have fear. We're supposed to have fear. And I feel like my example, if you're trip outside and you just don't put your arms out, your body's mechanism is fear, scared, I'm going to stop. Otherwise, you just fall on your head, And so I feel like there's a reason why we have fear. That's just more of my example of, just there's so many different examples around why fear is important, but also there's definitely an investment in fear, right? You can overly invest in fear, and it could be dangerous. It could be dangerous fear, where it feels like you can't leave your home. Maybe you've buried yourself in boxes, and, things become chronic, right? Chronic physically, chronic emotionally. And so looking at these fears, that's not healthy. It's not meant to be a part of the pregnancy journey. And the fear can be really big. So women that are having multiple physiological issues, for example, even just, hypergravitia, I'm not going to say it right, but let's say nausea or chronic throwing up. There's a huge level of energetic fear around there. And I did a podcast on a woman who wrote a whole book about it and looked at the spiritual aspects of it, which I feel like I share it with everyone I know that's going through nausea, and it's very profound, because it's going behind the science a bit, and it actually does have a really good resource in the book for just basic, acupuncture, ginger, this, that, but there's something bigger in the solar plexus, in the energy field that's happening, that women are moving into that chronic place. And it's different. Again, it's different for everybody. There's no this is why you have this, so let's fix it with this. This is why it can't be fixed. And, also looking at anxieties and fears, sometimes it's your own baby energy, your own space into the world, like you as a baby being, and even how your mother, what was her conception of pregnancy like? And so not that they're the same. Some people believe, well, my mom had a long pregnancy, so I'll have a long pregnancy. That's a huge myth. That is not true. Every pregnant person, every DNA genetic connection is very different. And if there are similar energies in it, I would say there's more an energetic lineage. There's some commonality that was created. Because when I even look at many women I talk to, they do not labor like their mothers did, because you have to really reflect on that for a moment. I can only speak for myself. I look at my mom's life. She came from a very different world, a very different nutrition, very different medicine at the time. And when she was in pregnancy, she had a lot of anxieties and emotional stuff. And so I'm a part of that. And she also had grief. So she had a death right before I was born. So I was born into that energy, right? And then we fast forward millions of moons later. And then I'm in pregnancy. And what am I carrying in that? What am I carrying in that story? And how is that affecting my own consciousness and connecting? And I do feel like some pregnancies, I call them, they could be very shadowy. And some pregnancies may not be shadowy at all, that there's no deeper work to do around it. And it's so different for everybody. And, and when there's anxieties, when there's fears, where is baby in this? Sometimes baby, you're not even paying attention to baby's energy, but this is where it's really important. Going, oh, yes, there's this baby being, there's stuff happening, there's this soul. And it's really, I feel like it's very healing, is to bring that conversation to your mind. Because the mind can feel very threatened at times and get trapped in fear. Because we don't want to hear or feel bad things, right? But that's what happens. And sometimes things we think are fearful may actually not be at all. And I've seen women, I've actually supported women where they've come in pregnancy and they get medical scares, and we work with just their intuitive connection with their baby, and that, baby at times will say, it's going to be okay. What does that mean? Baby says it's going to be okay. Like I'm going to be, genetically fine, or does that mean my mom is going to be okay, that everything is going to be figured out? And so it's so hard at times, right, in pregnancy to trust. Trust. They should teach this as soon as women get pregnant. Where is your connection to trust? How do you get rooted in trust? Is it in the trust in your cells, the trust of breath, the trust in your heart, the trust in your mind? It's so challenging, and I always like to challenge people in this energy of trust. It's not just a word you're saying, like, oh, I'm just going to trust. Wow, wouldn't that be so easy? I'm just going to trust. And then there it is. Pow. I feel like trust is a relationship that's built with the self over time. And I know for me, a part of my conscious conception journey, way before I even thought of conceiving, probably more than 5 years before I thought of conceiving, I started working with the energy of trust. Because I knew that, wow, who am I in this world? And if I can't trust myself, and in this body of cells, in this conscious being that I am, in my mind, in my heart, what is the point? I don't want to live in a shroud of anxiety and fear. That's not natural. And so I found and rooted into my own inner divine light body. I found other dimensional energies to connect with. And I realized what that meant to trust. And I worked energetically, obsessively. I had to clear a lot of sickness away before I even thought of conception. And, it brought me to that next place. And so I always speak about trust. Trust begins way before pregnancy, way before conception. And sometimes people don't discover it until conception. And sometimes that is a part of their journey of struggle, of coming back to self-trust in such a deep and empowering way. And then moving into trust in pregnancy, moving into trust in motherhood. Now you've given birth and you trusted the birth process, even though there's such intensity or maybe you distrusted the birth process, again, whatever that energy is, but connecting with baby. So you're in labor and baby's moving, right? Baby's like maybe their feet first, maybe their butt first, maybe their head first, maybe they're sideways. And this is where I feel like it's so valuable. This is when you're communicating. This is the relationship you've been building over months, over weeks. You got this. There is that connection. And I hear such great stories from women where they felt like they were speaking to baby and everything was fine. Baby was good. Baby was responding to that because you're not separating your energy from your child as this separate being that's like, oh, it's like this, I can't see my baby on the outside, so do they exist? No, baby exists on that soul level way before you even conceive them. And so now you've built that awareness and connection around it, and that is the vibration that you continue to elevate with, that you continue to connect with. And then you give birth, and then you have this being in this world, and then you have a newborn who's probably going in between being here and not being here at times, and they're integrating their connection, and then you get to see their physical body, and you get to really kind of reunite with their energy. It's so powerful. I feel like women, once they pass through the birth threshold, they're reborn into another part of your life. And so your communication can begin in conception, it could begin in pregnancy, and it moves out because your newborn really needs your telepathic intuitive insights, not just your natural mothering instincts. There's another element to that. The energetic awareness of baby is so nice. It's like, oh, I'm just responding to my baby's energy because I can sense and know what they want or what they feel. And I feel like sometimes when we don't know what they want or feel, we're losing our sense of grounding and awareness. And that does happen. Sleep deprivation, a lack of support, not very good nutrition, or just feeling emotionally, excitedly overwhelmed at times. And so I feel like there's many different spiritual remedies that can support the anxieties and fears over pregnancy with this kind of pre-birth communication bonding. And, the guidance of pregnancy is very different for everybody, how you tune in and how you continue to develop your practice with each other. And again, this baby being, this beautiful pregnant energy and aura, baby's growing and expanding. And I want to bring more of this baby connection and energy from the most developed culture, and of course we know even to the smaller, more tribal little community cultures, there's this beautiful bonding of human being to human being that happens. And this soul body, this spirit body, what is this energy that's a part of it? And if you are someone that's in conception or in pregnancy, or you are currently in pregnancy, bring this new wisdom, bring this vibration of your awareness forward, and it does it for humanity. And check in with your baby, feel their personality, or what I call is their soul personality. Tune into that, and pay attention. And, a lot of people love rubbing their belly like, hello, baby, what's up? Tell me what's going on, go into those deeper messages with baby. And listen, just listen, and maybe see the signs and symbols in your world. Maybe pick up a journal, maybe do a little bit of chanting. There's no right or wrong way to communicate with baby. All there is trust and continued love and continued support. If you liked my podcast, please subscribe and leave reviews. I want to thank you for joining Spirit Baby Radio this week, and I want you also to please check out my newest book, Sacred Communication, A Spirit Baby Journal. And this Spirit Baby Journal is your inner process. It's for women in conception and pregnancy, where you get to have that and build that relationship of trust and of love, of sacredness. To learn more about my services in supporting people all around the world in private one-on-one sessions, online classes, programs, and private VIP retreats, you can visit soulbabycommunication.com.
This is Spirit Baby Radio. Thank you for joining Kelly in the energy of awareness, love, healing, and soul communication. Please join the next episode at www.soulbabycommunication.com.